Hello, this is Taylor Elwood, your mad scientist and magical experimenter at magicalexperiments.com. Okay, folks, the reason I'm laughing is because I have two different channels, and so I'll have a channel where I'll be saying like, hey, I'm the business wizard for eccentric entrepreneurs. And so like that's what was going through my head right then. Anyway, no, for this channel it's the mad scientist and magical experimenter. Alright, so recently I had a question given to me, what system of evocation or what technique do you use for evocation? And they were asking specifically about evocation of goetic demons, but I'm going to tell you how I do my system of evocation in general, because it's basically applies to any entity that I work with. Let's first off start with what I don't use. I don't use the classic formula of an evocation triangle. I don't use incense or anything along those lines. I don't cast a magical circle before I do the working. Now some of you are probably going to gasp and say, well, isn't that really dangerous? And the answer to that is, it depends on what you're doing. Or rather, it depends on what's already in place. You see, when I'm doing magical workings, I've already done a battery of daily rituals that day, and those daily rituals aren't just done for the purposes of doing daily work. They're also done in order to create a very specific environment so that if I choose to do magical work in that environment, I've already got everything in place for it. And the beauty of it is because I continue doing this stuff day in, day out, it builds up over time. So let's say even if I didn't do it on a given day, well, guess what? I've already got all that protection magic and all that other stuff there. It's not like it just fades away at the end of the day. So I don't use those things. So what do? Well, first off, when I choose to work with a given entity, what I like to do is I like to actually invoke the entity first. And the reason why is because I see the invocation as kind of a meet and greet session. It's our chance to get to know each other and find out if we're even going to work together to any degree. And if we are going to work together, what kind of agreement we're going to come to before we actually start the work. Because the way I think of it is that if I'm doing evocation, at that point I've basically said, guess what? We're doing work together. So I don't want to do that at the very beginning. I want to instead do an invocation. I want to get to know the entity. And the way I do my invocations is a combination of visualization and sound. I will visualize the seal or sigil of the entity, and barring that, if I don't have that, I'll visualize an appearance of the entity. But then what I'll also do is I will also say the name of the entity. And usually I'm doing this in meditation. And I'll start out by whispering it in my mind. Actually, I'll say it in my mind quietly. So I'll say a name like Bune, okay? And I'm just going to say Bune, Bune, Bune quietly in my mind. And then I'm going to start whispering. Bune, Bune. And then it'll get a little louder. Bune, Bune, Bune. And then a little louder. Bune, Bune, Bune. And then louder. Bune, Bune, Bune. And then louder. Bune, Bune, Bune. And then louder. Bune, Bune, Bune. And I'll continue going on until I've established a connection with the entity. In this case, we're establishing a connection with Bune. Now, when I've invoked the entity into me, we're going to have that meet and greet session. And that meet and greet session really is, hi, I'm Taylor. Hi, I'm, in this case, Bune, or I'm the name of the entity. Okay, let's talk. And we'll determine at that point if we're a good fit or not. Sometimes it's not a good fit. For example, I did a working toward Visago, and I decided, you know what, this isn't a good fit. And Visago agreed. He was like, yeah, we're not a good fit. Whereas Bune and I, well, we decided, yes, we're a good fit. And so it was kind of an agreement that, okay, we're going to work together. Well, once we've decided we're a good fit, then it comes down to describing what the relationship is going to look like. Because here's the thing, if I'm going to ask Bune or any other entity to take on to work with me, I've got to recognize something. The responsibility goes both ways. I'm asking them to take on certain responsibilities for me. For example, if I'm saying to Bune, hey Bune, I'd really like you to help me work with me on my businesses, to help me get some different business ideas, to try some things out, to point me in the right direction of mentors, to help help me basically become a better business owner. That's a responsibility he's taking on. Now, at that point, he's going to say to me, okay, well, what responsibilities are you willing to take on? And here's the thing. It goes both ways. If you're going to enter into a relationship with a spirit, you need to recognize that you're taking on certain responsibilities. And those responsibilities aren't just making an offering every so often. Those responsibilities are more than just that. It means that you're going to follow through on things that you say you'll do. In the case of Bune, right now I'm making this video and I am talking about him, and I am using him as the example. That's in part an offering to him. It's also part of my responsibility to him, because one of the things that he said to me is, well, hey, if you want to work with me in this context, I want you to work with me as well. I want you to tell people about me. I want you to tell people about how you've worked with me. I want people to know about me. Okay, well, I'm performing that responsibility. I am following through. And as a result, I'm making sure that the relationship is balanced. However, to me, it's more than just that. If I'm going to go and do this kind of work, I am going to need to make sure that he and I have a solid relationship in a manner that goes beyond just, okay, I'm going to compel you to do something. So the way that I look at it is that it's a relationship based on respect, as well as responsibility. I'm taking on these responsibilities, but I'm also showing respect. And the respect does come in the form of the offering. And the offering can come in different ways. For example, it can include writing about Bune, but it could also include a food or a wine offering or an offering of something else. In my case, I'm getting ready to go away on a trip, and I'm actually making the entire trip be an offering of respect to the entities in question. They're going to get a chance to experience through me my trip. And the reason for that is because I want to give them that experience. In fact, the way that I look at it is, if I'm going to do an offering, I'm going to actually allow them to come into me for that particular offering. So if I give them an offering of food, I'm going to actually allow them to taste the food through me. Now, why would I do that? Because to me, what they really want isn't just the food, they want the experience. They operate on a different level of existence, on a different plane of existence, and if you're not willing to meet them part way, if you're not willing to allow them to have that experience in this plane of existence, I think really you're not giving them necessarily the respect. You're not cultivating the relationship in the way that you could. Now, a lot of other people are going to tell you that's not how they would do things, and that's fine. You can choose to follow their way of doing things. You can do it the way that I do it. You can figure it out on your own. As far as the actual evocation works, the way that it happens is, after we've come to our agreement, I'll usually come up with a painting. And the painting will be something I've created myself. I'll have invoked the entity at the time, and the painting will be a channeling of that particular entity. In fact, I'm going to go real quick and show you, so I'll be right back. And I'm back, and here is my painting of Bune. This is my way of evoking Bune. A lot simpler than going and getting an evocation triangle put together or any of those other things. What I did is, once we came to our agreement, I channeled him. When I did the painting, he kind of told me what he wanted, how it would look, and yes, the painting was an offering as well as an evocation portal. And then after that, voila, I now have my evocation portal, so that if I want to work with Bune, I simply can allow the painting to allow me to access his skills and whatnot. It's essentially a permanent evocation portal. I know, again, people are going to say, well, what? Aren't you insane? Why wouldn't you close that? Yada, yada, yada. And my answer to that really is, again, My approach works for me. I've never had any of the negative stories happen to me that other people talk about when they talk about working with different spirits. And the reason why is because I treat them with respect, I follow through on my responsibilities, and I trust them. And I know, again, people are going to say you shouldn't necessarily trust them. Wow, this is a long video, by the way. I do, because they've always followed through on their end. And so I've trusted them. And I will, and that's how it works. That's how my system, my technique of evocation works. And it's more elegant, quite frankly, because once I've set this up, I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to go to all the trouble. It's already there. And every time I want to activate it, I simply can say his name, and boom, there he is. He's evoked. He's going to go out and do whatever he needs to do. And it's the same for any of the other entities that I work with. It's really, in a sense, that what I'm doing is I'm creating a housing for them. And if you've read my book, Creating Magical Entities, you know that we talk about housing a fair amount in there and how you can house an entity. Well, that's basically what this is. I have provided a housing of sorts for Bune, so that when I need to work with him, I can basically draw upon him, I can evoke him, what have you. And again, in return, I need to just follow through on my responsibilities. And I will say that Bune has delivered for me many a times. I have to admit that I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for Bune. My businesses have come a long way in large part because Bune has helped out in different ways. And I'm continuing to get that help from him. So that's how I set up my relationships. That's my system. And if you're wondering, like, if a party's like, well, you know, I'm not going to really find that in most books. Yes, you're not, but I'll tell you what. Magic isn't about technique so much as it is about understanding what is underneath the technique. What are the principles that inform that technique? If you look at my process, what's happening here is that I've created a way to connect with Bune. And I take that principle of connection, and that is how it works. I use that principle of connection to influence the way that I'm doing the magical work. I'm essentially creating my own techniques and systems instead of relying on what someone else came up with. Because honestly, what someone else came up with has its value. I will never argue that. But I want to make stuff that actually works for me and is effective and simple. And I would challenge you to do the same thing. Alright, so this has been a long-ass video. Feel free to comment below if you have a comment, and if you haven't subscribed yet, click over on the T. Thanks so much and take care.